So there's a little bit of a dip in excitement usually on the weekend after the Breeders' Cup, but not if you're a West Point Thoroughbreds partner. We had a phenomenal weekend on Saturday at Aqueduct, and it had been a tough meet at Aqueduct. I've been out there a lot for a lot of horses to run pretty disappointingly. Saturday was the big breakout party. First, we had Cugino run second in the Hill Prince. I was surprised at how far back he was, not to criticize Flavien Prat as the chief member and number one president of the Flavien Prat fan club. He ran second to Deterministic. There's no shame in that. Deterministic is a really nice horse as well. And then Integration winning the Red Smith Stakes. And I think that this is actually a significant result beyond just the West Point interest and the home team and all that. Because Integration, after the 3-year-old campaign he had, going 3 for 3, record-setting win in the Hill Prince, I think we all assumed like this is going to be, if not the top, at least one of the top turf horses in the country in 2024. Didn't quite shake out that way. He didn't have a terrible campaign. He ran third in the Maker's Mark Mile, second in the Arlington Million. So it's not like it was a disaster, but he hadn't had that breakout moment until Saturday in the Red Smith. And it was so great to see him get back to form, produce that big effort. So let's try again. Let's try again in 2025 to make him the top turf horse in the country. Shug is considering running in the Pegasus World Cup turf. And also he might run Battle of Normandy, who had a big win on Saturday for West Point as well in the River City Stakes at Churchill Downs. Pretty convincing win. He's now won 4 in a row and has really come around. So the stable is pretty loaded with turf stars, but I think the top among them is Integration. And it's just one of those divisions, John, that I think is crying out for like a big time horse. We haven't had that big local or domestic turf influence in the division in a long time. I'm hoping he'll be that horse because he had some pretty good acceleration in the stretch of that race.
Well, the thing that was so impressive, Joe, is, aside from Cugino, who I thought ran a huge race in the Hill Prince, Integration, reaffirmed his status as one of the top turf horses, in the country. And that's not an easy feat because that division in particular, I mean, those horses don't retire. They don't retire primarily because there's no stud deals usually for the top turf horses. Obviously, Up to the Mark comes to mind as a recent, turf only horse that is standing in Kentucky for a significant amount of money. I believe he's standing for $25,000. But for the most part, those horses are gelded and they run until they're 5, 6, 7 years old. So you see the same horses not only, race in and race out, but they're gearing for specific races. And I think you can say that, the Grade 2 Red Smith is on a lot of people's radar, if they can't make the Breeders' Cup. The other one that you didn't mention, and again, not that this is just going to be, a show just about your horses, but they had a great weekend. Maui Strong kicked ass. And I was in that race, so I watched it live and I was like, holy crap, who is this horse, Maui Strong? From the outside post, came from the clouds, and ran down a pretty solid field of maidens at Churchill Downs. And I know you're talking about turf horses and everything, but Maui Strong has got to be considered, as a up and coming horse for his 3-year-old campaign. And I'm going to be anxious to see, where his next step is. Is it going to be a Gulfstream in that series that they have for 3-year-olds working their way up to Derby weekend. But I mean, Joe, for the black and gold, it was all gold as far as results, and I couldn't be happier. And did I see right that Carson's Run's going to make his next race in the Hollywood Derby?
Yeah. Sending him out to California. He's obviously had a tremendous year. That'd be a great capper. And yeah, Maui Strong was really good too. He's one of those horses that you just Kitten's Joy out of a Giants Causeway mare. He showed a little bit of talent on dirt, like not a ton, but the fact that he can even stand up on dirt.
Yeah.
Suggests that he's a really nice horse, and we're looking forward to what he can do as a 3-year-old. So it was a great weekend, and really cathartic weekend, like I said, because it had been like a little bit of a disappointing fall. So we're really looking forward to those turf horses in 2025. John, I wanted to switch gears a little. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and Joe, just for for our listeners and for our viewers, that's the cyclical nature of racing. Is that you're going to have a great weekend like you guys did, and then that's going to make up for a couple of bad weekends that you had previously. So it's not a matter of or should we change things if we don't win, or should we do something different, or should we change jockeys or trainers or managers or racetracks altogether? Sometimes you just have to stay the course and just know that at the end of the year, you're going to run to your baseball card averages, and you guys are going to be in the 16 to 18%. We're 15 to 16%. 100%. But for the most part, if you continually do the right thing and buy the right kind of horses and give them to the right trainers, they're gonna land where they're supposed to. And I think this weekend is a perfect example. It's kind of a just a microcosm of the year of racing that any of us have. Sometimes you have to kind of wade through a lot of shit to find the pony.
No, that's a great point, and that's why I think it's we have the benefit of Terry's been doing this for a long time, West Point's been doing this for a long time, you guys have been doing this for a long time, so it's like it's when you've been doing it for that long, like to just trust the process.
Right, exactly.
I think there's a lot of people who come into this business guns blazing, and then when it doesn't work out for like 6 months or a year or so, then that's when you see the dispersals.
Right.
So I think that's a great point, and you have the benefit of that historical perspective if you've been doing it for as long as West Point or DJ has, to just kind of ride it out. The results will come. Right. Switching gears for a second, John, you had some interesting observations about the sales, because it's a big time of year for the sales after the Breeders' Cup. Obviously, we had the Facing Tip and Night of the Stars. Keeneland November is going on right now, so this is like the big broodmare weanling sale season. Right. The results have been kind of hit or miss just from a layman's perspective, but I'm curious to hear what you think about it.
No, Joe, and that's really the conundrum that the breeding industry is in right now, is that there's 20 to 30 stallions that are the popular stallions. They're like the Heathers of the industry. Everyone wants to be them. Everyone wants to be a part of their program, and yet there's a finite number of them that are out there. And what I'm seeing is that not only is the market fickle, because it's been that way for a long time, but now you're starting to see, Joe, some of these, like it used to be where if you wanted to breed to the tried and true older stallions, you knew you would pay $50,000 to $100,000 for a stud fee. If the foal came out right and vetted okay, you were going to get $150,000 to $300,000, and that was just a good business plan. But what's happening now is that people are giving up on some of these older stallions. And it's not through any fault of their own, other than just they've had a bunch of horses out there. So I'm going to use Munnings as an example, because I really like Munnings, and I think that he's a solid stallion. But there have been enough of them out there where trainers have had a Munnings and it hasn't worked out for them. So now they're like a little bit sour on that horse. So they won't, buy the next Munnings that comes in, or at least they'll be like, this one has to be perfect for me to take a chance on it again. Whereas like 5-10 years ago, that wasn't the case. If you had a good stallion, you could ride that horse out almost until it was like 18, 20 years old before you had to worry about, okay, well, maybe they're shooting blanks. And I think it's just the time frame. The time frame for a stallion to succeed, they have to like overcome a lot. Then once they succeed, which is 1 out of 10 new stallions succeed, then they go through the roof. And then they have like a 5 or 6 year window of success, or of commercial success, I should say. And then it's like people get off them and go to the newest and shiniest and top stallion again. So the shelf life of these popular stallions is decreasing. Number one, that's just an observation of mine. And then one that really made me scratch my head this year was the plight of Arcangelo. And Arcangelo is a stallion, as you know. He won the Belmont. He won a number of grade ones. Was named champion, and retired. And retired what I thought was for a reasonable amount of money. I think he's staying there for like $30,000 or $35,000. Son of Arrogate. Joe doesn't have any foals on the ground, but for an unknown reason, or a bunch of unknown reasons, people are really sour on him. And if you look at the mares in foal to him and what they sold for, normally for a first-year stallion with no foals on the ground, you'd figure, okay, it's going to be like 1.5 to 3 times stud fee. That's if it's the right kind of mare, and if the mare looks good, and blah blah blah, all the other things. But this one in particular, nothing has changed from the time that the horse retired. There have been no other sons of Arrogate that have failed, okay, as a stallion. Arcangelo himself doesn't have any foals on the ground, and there's, you could argue that maybe there's not a lot of advertising support for the horse necessarily in comparison to other first-year stallions. That's arguable. That's just my feeling. Yet you bring a mare in foal to Arcangelo to the sale, and people are like, nope, don't want that. It's almost like you're trying to give them cancer. I mean, they won't look at him. They won't, and there's no reason why. Like, it wasn't like this horse came up after retired and there was a positive and it was DQ'd. from winning a big race, and therefore the luster is off. Or like I said, the other sons of Arrogate haven't hit the board as far as stallion, on the stallion roster. He has no foals on the ground, so nobody's basing it on anything other than just, I heard a guy who said that he doesn't like Arcangelo, and that's why I'm not going to buy a mare in foal to him. It was just an interesting observation, that you would think that a horse like that would, jump up and really add value. But for some reason, that horse is like persona non grata, or horsana non grata, depending on what language you're speaking, for our friends in Argentina. And like nobody wants to touch a mare in foal to Argentina, to Arcangelo. So I'll be curious to see when the foals hit the ground and people actually have evidence of whether or not he's like stamping his foals, or the foals have good walks or good confirmation stuff. If kind of the tide turns on it. But for right now, Joe, it was just a really weird kind of anomaly just on that one horse, and the horse hasn't done anything to deserve it.
Yeah, I don't get it. Like, I honestly, it's kind of above my pay grade, but it's like, it just seems kind of like hive mind to me.
Yes,
like a couple people sour, a couple important people sour on the horse for whatever reason,
right,
and everyone backs off. Like I think of Daredevil.
Yeah.
When Daredevil got shipped to Turkey, and basically before his horses even had a chance to run,
right,
then he comes back and he has Swiss Skydiver and She Dares the Devil, and they're like, oh shit, we got to bring him back. Yeah. We didn't actually give him a chance to prove himself on the racetrack. It's such a fickle industry, right, the sales and stallion business. And I just think I think that's kind of a function of there being too many horses going to stud, and I think that's one of the reasons, at least from my perspective, is that there's too many different options for new stallions that if one of them has one little chink in the armor at all, get rid of them. There's another new one coming in right behind them. I think there's too many options when it comes to new stallions.
Right. And one other thing that I'll say, and I know normally I don't agree with their philosophies in business, but I have to give credit to the horses that are retiring out of the Baffert camp, because they did something that was very smart, Joe, in my opinion. Instead of giving the 5 or 6 new stallion prospects to 1 or 2 farms, they doled them out to basically one stallion to each farm. I think there was one farm that has 2, but for the most part, they doled them out and basically said, here's the one that you're going to have. Make it work. And if you I'm paraphrasing, I'm speculating, I should say, make it work. And if it works, we have a pipeline of other colts that we're going to, that we potentially can send to you. And they sent one out to like the major 5 farms in Kentucky. And I think that was a brilliant move, because basically they're putting them in competition with each other, the farms, in competition, and basically saying, how are you going to make my horse the best stallion prospect that it can be? And there's a lot of buzz. You talk about hive mentality. There's a lot of buzz on 3 or 4 of them about how good they look and how well conformed they are and everything. And that's the way that you manage stallions, is that you make the farms really step up and market and promote the hell out of the one that they represent for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's just also, in addition to there being too many new stallions every year, like the expanded books of 200 plus mares, like there's just such competition for a decreasing amount of mares that, yeah, it's not surprising to see new stallions given up on, but it doesn't make any sense when they haven't had even a chance. In this case, even a chance to have their horses sell.
Yeah, to have
forget running on the racetrack.
Yeah, exactly. To have them set foot on the ground, for God's sake. And it wasn't like he was getting bad mares. I mean, it's a function of the popularity contest, the hive mentality, however you want to say it. And the horse really this one in particular hasn't done anything to stub its own toe. It's really kind of unfair. And you say, there's too many stallions that get retired. Here's a horse that won a couple of grade 1s and was a champion, and is a son of Arrogate. So, and a great female family. So you say, if any of them had the reason and rationale to be retired, this one would be it, as opposed to a horse that maybe was like well bred but never ran, or ran a couple of times, or competed well, but was a kind of horse that was a compiler, that just picked up races after kind of the good ones all retired, and he picked off some of the older graded stake races because the competition wasn't as great. So it made me scratch my head, but enough where I wanted to at least talk it out and get your insight on it, as to why that might be the case. And I would love to hear if somebody else has a better theory as to why that was the case. I'm all ears, because we bred a mare to Arcangelo. And I'm going to wait and see, what the foal looks like before making a decision on whether or not, the horse is going to be a success or a failure. And even that, Joe, is too small of a sample. Even if we go to the weanling sale next year and look at like 20 of them, that's too small. But unfortunately, that's kind of the game that we're in right now.